Hey, hey, welcome back to another episode of the Consistency Corner. I'm really excited for our topic today. And I say that like every week, but I really am today. But one thing that I want to talk about before we get into the meat of this episode is cold coffee. I mean, cold coffee, warm coffee, whatever. Let's talk about coffee for a second. At the end of the day, what we all know to be true, but maybe we don't think about very often, is that a coffee cup isn't coffee. The cup is the container. The copy is the thing you wanted. And we treat social media a lot like it's the coffee, but really it's the container. Okay, I'm going to say that again. I want this to really sink in. Social media, it's not our marketing strategy, just like the coffee cup isn't coffee. Both of them are containers, right? The channel itself is the container. It's the cup. But what matters most is what you pour into the cup. But we all know, even the type of coffee cup that you use, changes your experience with your coffee. You're not going to put your hot coffee into a wine glass. I mean, maybe you do, but it doesn't really make sense. And most of you, like me, probably have a favorite coffee mug. And when you're drinking your coffee out of that one versus your not so favorite mug, it makes a difference in your experience. So why am I talking about all this? Well, this is on my mind right now because we're sitting here in the middle of June and we're halfway through the year. And the halfway point is when I like to really stop and ask a question that sounds easy, but it's kind of sneakily hard to answer honestly. And that is the containers where I am putting my marketing, the channels, right? What is their job? Is the coffee cup's job to hold coffee, or are we asking the coffee cup to hold wine? I mean, I'm stretching a little bit on this analogy, but you get what I'm saying. So we're not asking, am I posting? Not did I show up this week? Not did I pour some coffee? But what am I asking this channel, this platform to do for my business? And is it actually doing it? So by the end of this episode, you're going to walk away with a clear look at every channel you're pouring into right now and be able to ask yourself that question with a straight face. Is this channel doing its job? Instagram, LinkedIn, a podcast, a blog, ads, an email list, whatever you've got. And you're going to be able to tell the difference between a channel that's underperforming and a channel that's doing absolutely nothing, because those are two very different things. And also, you'll be able to, I'm hoping to really identify, have you given this channel a clear job description? And just like an employee, have we given it what it needs to be set up for success? And I got to be honest with you, I am not teaching from a mountaintop over here where I've got it all figured out. I'm asking myself these exact same questions in my own business right now. I've taken on more clients recently, and I'm kind of at a tipping point in scaling where I'm bringing on a team. And I'm literally deciding, am I bringing on a team to support client work or my own marketing, and kind of treating the Consistency Corner like one of our clients. So I'm sitting here doing that evaluation of what channels are we using, and knowing that every single channel you're on has a cost. It's so important to understand and identify and articulate, what are we asking it to do? And that cost, it's not just money. It's time, it's attention, it's the mental energy of remembering it exists and feeling behind if you skip a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. And when you're running several channels and you've never really stopped to evaluate, what are these channels' jobs in my marketing strategy? They're eating up capacity that you need for everything else. So this check-in that I'm asking you to do is not busy work. It's here to help lighten your mental load around marketing. So let me walk you through how I'm thinking about my own channels right now, and then I'll give you the 3 questions that I'm using to decide whether each one earns more of my attention on the back half of the year, more of my capacity, and that capacity could mean outsourcing to a team member, or if it deserves less on the rest of 2026. Again, like we talked about, the actual channel itself is not the strategy. The channel is how the strategy travels, okay? The goal is to get a booked client, to fill a program, to grow a list, to sell an offer, to have a lead, book a conversation. And the channel is the road that you take to get there. Okay. So the entire strategy is what's the goal? What's the content that's going to help move us towards the goal? And what's the channel we're using to distribute that content. That's the strategy. The channel is the road. And that matters for this mid-year check-in because if you don't know where you're driving and what roads you're taking, you can't tell whether or not the road that you're on is taking you closer or taking you around and around in circles. And a lot of us are busy on roads that are pointed to one destination, but maybe it's not the right destination, or we haven't actually checked the map lately. So we're posting, we're showing up, we're tired. We're never stopping to ask whether this particular road goes where we're trying to go and if it can hold the vehicles, the content that are going to get us there. Listen, not all marketing is created equal. You can put real, consistent effort into something and still have it be the wrong thing. Effort is not the same as results. So hold both ideas at once as we go. You might be working hard at a particular channel and that channel might not be doing its job. Both can be true. It doesn't mean that it's the wrong channel. It might mean you're doing the wrong work. It doesn't, minimize the work that you are doing, but it's information, right? So I don't want any guilt or shame here. It's just information we're taking in right now. And here's another thing to think about. A lot of us have not picked up our channels or chosen the channels we're marketing on intentionally or on purpose. We added Instagram several years ago and we happen to just still have a presence on it. We tried Threads because it was the trendy new thing a while ago and we still post occasionally, or maybe we abandoned it. We started that newsletter because someone said you should have an email list and a newsletter, but maybe you haven't emailed your list in 2 months. Or maybe you launched a podcast in a burst of energy 1 month and then didn't really know if you should keep going with it or not. Or possibly you've boosted a post and thought like, okay, I should be doing ads. Each one of those decisions made sense to you the day that you started it. But you've probably never sat down and looked at the whole set of decisions at once and asked whether they make sense together and whether you actually have the capacity to run on all of these different channels, to travel on all of these roads at the same time and do it well. So that's what this reset is all about. So I'm going to give you a real life example. We're going to talk through 4 of my channels that I'm kind of walking through and thinking through right now in this channel reset. Let's start with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is kind of humbling me right now, to be honest. Why? Because I barely touch it. I don't prioritize my LinkedIn presence. We repurpose Instagram posts there from time to time. I pop out, I pop in, I scroll for 5 minutes and engage once in a while. Every so often, I'll get a burst of time or energy and create some LinkedIn first posts, but it's not where I spend my creative energy, even though I told myself I was going to. But there's some market data that I cannot ignore. Lately, I have had people hiring me to help them with LinkedIn. Some of my most recent clients, LinkedIn is their first priority channel, and they're coming to me for help with that channel. So that's a signal to me. The market is telling me people see me as someone who can help with LinkedIn, while meanwhile, I'm underinvesting in my own LinkedIn. I mean, I guess it's kind of like, what do they say? The cobbler's kids never wear shoes. Do shoe cobblers even exist anymore? That's a complete side note, but you get where I'm going there with that. So I want to be careful here because this is exactly the spot where it's easy to get this choice wrong. The fact that my recent clients are active on LinkedIn, and that's the channel they prioritize, does not necessarily mean that my ideal client is most active there, okay? People are hiring me to help with their LinkedIn is market data. Whether or not my ideal client hangs out there, spends time there, is different market data that I have to sift through. They're not necessarily the same, but it's easy to blur them together and pour my energy into a channel because there was a signal that I read wrong, right? So the question I'm sitting with for the back half of the year is, does LinkedIn deserve more of my attention? I'm weighing that market signal against where my ideal client really is. And I'm staying honest that I don't yet have the data to make that decision. Those are things that I need to research, that I need to test. And they're 2 things that might point in 2 different directions. And if I decide that LinkedIn does earn more from me, here's what that does not mean. It doesn't mean I'm trying to become a LinkedIn influencer. It might be one format that I can sustain, one weekly post. It might be a rhythm of engagement. It might be outsourcing and bringing on a LinkedIn team member, a LinkedIn specialist team member to handle my LinkedIn content. The bar isn't do everything here, right? The bar is set the bar, meaning what's the job description here, and then figure out how to do it well with our capacity. All right, let's jump over to Instagram. Instagram is the opposite problem. So it's the channel I have prioritized hard. It's the one that I default to, the one I put the most consistent effort into, the one that I hang out on the most often. So when I get honest about the job it's doing, it's a little uncomfortable that even though I wish it was like getting me new audience, like I'm growing my followers and my impressions, I wish that it was booking me calls and giving me clients. It's actually not. The answer for what it's actually doing right now is middle of funnel. It's nurturing my audience. I have a presence there. I am getting some reach. I'm getting a little bit of engagement. But at the end of the day, it's not pulling its weight at top of funnel or middle of funnel. And so over the last few weeks, I've kind of deprioritized Instagram content because I don't have the bandwidth to keep pumping it out the way I have been before. And that's what led to this kind of channel check-in for me is like, okay, what is Instagram's job really that I can help it do well consistently, right? If that means its job today is just having a presence to remind my network that I exist and have something to say, again, middle of funnel, nurture, maybe that's okay. But I keep wanting to have viral reels and bring in brand new people who've never heard of me who hit follow and say like, oh, you're so smart. I want to listen to what you have to say. I want it to be a nurture campaign or nurture channel where people who follow me engage, where leads who are lurking move further down the funnel to say like, hey, I want to hire the consistency corner. Hey, I want Ruthie as my marketing director. I want it to be that conversion channel where people use the ManyChat keyword and opt into the mixer and send me the DMs and book the calls. But the honest truth is I do not have the capacity to create the volume of content and the type of content it would take to do all three. You cannot ask a channel to do 3 full-time jobs on part-time effort. I'm going to say that again because I'm saying it to myself again. You cannot ask one channel to do 3 full-time jobs on part-time effort. It doesn't work. So Instagram is doing one of the jobs I've given it. It's nurturing. And it is. That signal is there. The data is there. But I've been frustrated that it's not doing the top of funnel job and the bottom of funnel job, but I never gave it what it needed to do those jobs, or at least not consistently. So part of my reflection for the back half of the year is a real question. And I would put it to you too. What would it really take to consistently create the volume of content that lets this channel do all 3 jobs? Not, I wish it did more, but really getting honest about how much content and what kind of each content and who's making that content, who's thinking about what that content needs to say, who's mapping all of this out. Because that's not just saying post more, right? That's saying have strategic and intentional awareness content built to travel to people who don't follow me yet. Have specific and intentional nurture content for people who already do to keep them engaged. Have conversion content that helps someone decide if they are on the fence, if they want to truly work with me or refer me, if they're like a referral partner. Those are 3 distinct content types that need real volume week after week to actually make a dent. They used to say it takes 7 touch points in marketing for somebody to move from not knowing you exist to converting. That number is long gone, my friends. I think the last number I heard was something like 56 touch points. And another number I heard a couple years ago now was, in addition to the touch points, whatever the number is in our content saturated world, was that somebody needed to spend 11 hours consuming your content, which is one of the reasons long form content is so valuable. But am I pumping out 11 hours worth of content for my audience to see on Instagram? Day to day, week to week, month to month? Well, probably not, especially since, what do they say, like 2% of your followers even see your content? This is a big question. And it's something that we've got to be honest about the algorithms, about the audience, about the content economy that we live in, instead of just being disappointed in a channel and think, I'm just not doing a good job. This is just not for me. Maybe I'm underfeeding it. So I have to decide, am I going to give this channel the volume it needs to do the job I want it to do? Or is it time to redefine its job? All right, let's move on to that long form content piece that I just talked about, my podcast. So, my podcast really serves as a repurposing engine. This is what you're listening to right now. Its main job in my business is to be a repurposing engine, to create emails from the words that I say, to give and my team at times a bank of ideas to pull from to create carousels, a blog post repurposed from the transcript, reels from clips from the podcast so that my face is getting out there on the internet, sharing my expertise and my personality and my message and my point of view. So, this episode that you're listening to, it's about to go do a whole lot of work in a handful of other places. And that's the job that I'm giving it right now. And it's doing that job beautifully. Now, I'm not asking my podcast to give me 1 million downloads. Would that be cool? I mean, sure, it would. But that's not the job I'm asking it to do. I'm not asking this podcast to bring in new audience members. Now, would it be cool if it did? Again, yes, but I'm not looking at it that way. So I'm not strategically positioning it that way right now. Again, would it be cool if you listened to this podcast and said like, "Hey, Ruthie, you are exactly the person that I have been wanting to work with. I am hiring you as my marketing director. I'm ready to work with the corner office." Well, yeah, that would be cool, but that's not what I'm asking the podcast to do week in and week out. The podcast is a content repurposing engine and a nurture tool for me to connect with my community and my audience. So I know what the podcast is for. I defined its job. And when I look at it, I'm not confused about whether or not it's working. Sure, I can get caught up on the vanity metrics just like anybody else and say like, "Oh, my podcast only got 40 downloads this week." Okay, you didn't design this piece of content or this channel to optimize for the maximum amount of downloads. If that's what you wanted, you would look at it, the content differently, right? So the clarity around what is this podcast's job has made evaluating it easy. But the reason it came up in this channel check-in for me is I do put a significant amount of effort into the podcast, planning what the topics are and whether or not they make sense in my campaign calendar, outlining the episodes and making sure that I have something to say that's worth you listening to, that's not garbage you could hear anywhere else on the internet or AI generated fluff. So between the planning, the outlining, the scripting, the recording, and then the time that my team takes to produce and publish the podcast and repurpose it, all of that is real time spent. So during this channel check-in, I'm asking, can we get anything more out of this podcast? Could we do the job a little bit differently so that it could do more jobs? And I don't know. We're still in the middle of evaluating that. All right, so now we're going to move on to the fourth channel that I am evaluating. And this is a question that sometimes can be considered expensive. And when I say expensive, I mean money. But here's the thing about spending money to get marketing results. You can spend time, you can spend money, you can spend both. The more you spend of both of those things, typically the faster you're going to get results. Doesn't always mean you're going to get the results you want. You might get information and results that you need to do something differently. But the more time you spend, the more money you spend on ads, the faster you're going to get results. So even if you're not currently running ads, I want you to hear my thought process about why I am running ads and why I'm going to continue to run ads, even though they're not yet giving me the results that I want. So I started running ads in April and I'm running a cold audience book a call funnel. So what that means is I'm putting my ads out there to a specific targeted list audience of people who don't already know me and follow me and engage with me. And I am literally asking them to go to my website, learn about the Consistency Corner agency, and book a call to talk with me about taking marketing off their to-do list. And there's a million things to evaluate in an ad funnel. There's the audience. There's the creative. And from the creative, we can talk about the image, the graphic, the copy. There's the timing that the ads are run. There's the budget that we're putting behind the ads. There's the actual landing page that they get to from the ads, and then whether or not it's doing its job of moving people down the funnel to the booking page. There's getting them to actually click the button to book the call, and then getting them to show up on the call, and then pitching what we do as the corner office and our cornerstone strategy and getting them to say yes to that offer. So I've spent a couple $1,000s so far. I'll be transparent about that. And I've booked so far, as of the day I'm recording this podcast, early June, I've booked 3 sales calls. And I've had a lot of weeks go by where nothing has happened. And from those 3 sales calls, again, I'm over here to be transparent. 2 didn't show up. 1 showed up and she wasn't really ready to make a decision and did not close. So here we are, a couple $1,000s in. We've tried tweaking the audience. We've tried tweaking the creative. We've tried tweaking the landing page. We're still trying things. And I heard an ad specialist say this a long time ago, and it really stuck with me, that ads will always work if you give them enough time and you make enough tweaks to find out what actually works. But that takes money, right? And so we have to decide, like, are we willing to sacrifice that money to get the data faster to eventually create an engine that can give us predictable conversion? Because the goal is for me to figure out what is the creative and the messaging that works on a cold audience. What is the right audience that Meta can identify that will, click on the link and go to the landing page? What's the landing page copy that moves them to the book a call form? What is the messaging on the book a call form that gets them to actually click book and then show up? I'm still trying to figure all of those things out, because once you figure out the right formula, then you have a channel that you can turn off, you can turn on, you can pour money at to ramp up, that is much more predictable than organic content. And so for me right now, most of my business comes from referrals, comes from word of mouth. And while that is great, it's not predictable. So I want to be able to have a channel that has a little bit more predictability behind it. So I am continuing to invest in ads, and stay tuned. I'll let you know when we figure it all out. I mean, hopefully by the time this podcast airs 2 weeks after I'm recording it, we've booked some things via our ads and figured some things out. So pay attention on stories. I'll share our journey as we go. So when we talk about this question about these channels, the channel check-in around ads, it might feel like there's more questions than there are answers. Do ads work for you? Should I try ads if I never have before? What do I want my ads to do? What type of budget do I need? What's the messaging? Who is the audience? There's a lot of questions. And I'm not saying that there's even a right answer. It's different for everybody. But it is worth having an honest conversation about before you write that channel off completely. Because the organic content marketing or content environment within marketing is constantly changing. We all know that. And it is important to evaluate the channels, not just in your own business, but in the context of the market. I mean, remember Clubhouse? I don't know if you remember Clubhouse. If you've been in the online business space for a while, you remember Clubhouse. So that was like 2019, maybe even 2018, 2020, somewhere in there. And it was like an audio only social media platform that people could like hang out in. And it was like the rage for a while. I don't even think it exists anymore. But again, the market changes, your business changes, your audience changes, your offers changes. All these things are always evolving. So having these check-ins is so important. So let me give you kind of a quick rundown of the 3 questions I want you to ask yourself. This is the part that, get your notebook out if you haven't been taking notes already. Number 1, have you given each channel that you are using a clear job description? If you hired a person and you never told them what their job was, 6 months later, you're going to get frustrated that they aren't doing their job. Well, whose fault is that? It's yours, because you never told them what to do. So with our channels, we have to say, what do I want this channel to do for my business? And whatever its job is, does it have what it needs to do its job? Are we setting it up for success? Number 2, have you defined what success looks like? A job description tells the channel what to do. Metrics tell you whether or not it did it, but these are different for every single channel, and we look at different metrics for different jobs, and we're looking at different KPIs, key performance indicators, to determine, is that metric telling me what I want or not, right? If Instagram's job is nurturing my existing audience, I'm not measuring it by new follower count. I'm looking at whether or not my existing people are seeing my content and engaging with my content. If the podcast job is repurposing, the metric is not downloads, it's how much usable content did this podcast give me, right? So the metric is the number, and it might be the math, but different metrics tell us different things, right? But it's the same exercise every single time. Name the job, name the 1 or 2 numbers that would prove it's doing its job, and consider what benchmark numbers you are going for. And then finally, number 3, is this platform performing? Is it underperforming, or is it doing nothing? Now, if it's performing, great. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. If it's underperforming or it's doing nothing, those are 2 different things, okay? And that's where a lot of this nuance lives. When you look at your results, there's a real difference between this channel isn't hitting the metrics I want and this channel isn't working at all for me. But a lot of the times we collapse those, but they really call for 2 different responses. If we ask ourselves, is it hitting the metrics I set? Yes, leave it alone. If no, now we ask, is it doing anything at all? Maybe Instagram isn't getting the impressions you hoped for, but is it getting you impressions at all? Is anyone landing there? Is anyone seeing that content? Because below target and dead are not the same thing. So now we got to follow the trail. If it is getting me something, where do people go next? What are we asking people to do once they got there, they saw the thing? Have we designed our content to take people to the next step, right? Have we evaluated what the next step is and what we want people to do from that channel, right? Have we thought about the customer journey in terms of our channels? And then are we putting content in that channel built for that job? Let me give you my own kind of like throw spaghetti at the wall situation where I wasn't doing this. It's not flattering, but I want you to know, like, this is real life and even happens to a seasoned marketing director. In the last 3 weeks, I have barely made any Instagram content. I have not had the capacity. I even had a content calendar mapped out and I just did not have the capacity to create content. I managed a few podcast clips and 1 or 2 kind of trend format reels that I could record pretty quickly. And, I just grabbed trending audio, saw something that somebody else did, made it my own. But none of that drove any meaningful impressions or engagement. They're just kind of sitting there. Now, they did get some impressions and some engagement, but not meaningful. And I could look at that and say, well, Instagram just doesn't work for me. But that's not what's happening. I stopped feeding Instagram the content to help it do its job. I tossed a couple pieces of spaghetti at the wall to feel like I posted, and the channel didn't fail. I changed what I was putting in the cup. And most of the time, when a channel isn't working, it's not because it's broken. It's because you either didn't give it a job, you didn't define success, or you didn't give it the tools and the content it needs to do its job. And that's a clarity problem. And the good news about clarity problems is they can be fixed. So the thing sitting underneath all of this, which I've kind of been hinting at and bringing up, is capacity. And I want to name this directly because it's where we're headed over the next few weeks in the podcast. As I've been capacity planning for my own client work and deciding on team members to bring on to support that work, I had an unlock that my own marketing, my own content, treating the consistency corner almost like one of our clients was eating a huge amount of my capacity, much more than I had ever really admitted to myself. I started tracking my time in Clockify and it was eye-opening. The way the numbers in front of my face told the real story was very surprising. The hours I was spending on my own marketing and content were not small. And they were coming straight out of capacity that I needed for other things, which is why when I got busy, the amount of content I was producing fell off. And it's not like I was, trying to be Gary Vee over here and post 6 times a day. But I was spending at least 30 hours a month on content between email, social media, and the podcast. And so often we think, sure, I can do one more thing. Sure, I can add one more channel. Sure, I can post more. But the numbers tell a different story. Because one post seems like it just takes 20 minutes, but it doesn't. And so the reason that I want to talk about that and I wanted to share that kind of wake up call with you is that you can do everything that I've described. You can give every channel a crystal clear job description. You can define success and know exactly what each channel needs to do its job. And then you look up and realize, I don't actually have the capacity to do all of this. I can't personally feed 5 channels, the content that each one needs while running the rest of my business, while serving my clients, while overseeing the operations, while doing the CEO things that only I can do. So when you hit that wall, you have a choice. You can get honest and change something. You can bring in help. You can cut a channel. You can shrink a job, or you can cross your fingers and hope while not taking any of the actions that would help the channel do its job. And we all know hope is not a strategy. We've tried it. I'm sure you've tried it. I've tried it, and it doesn't pay off. So, the bigger conversation that we can't finish today is where we're going over the next couple of weeks. You've got to think of your marketing as a road trip. Your channels are the roads and the vehicle, and the content is the vehicle. And they're how you move towards the destination, which is your business goals. And the worst thing that you can do on a road trip is to keep driving hard down a road without checking whether or not it's pointed where you want to go. So that's what the mid-year channel check-in is all about. Pulling over and looking at the map, determining the channels that serve your goal, they're not the actual goal. Get clear on where you're trying to go so that you can judge the road and whether or not it takes you to the destination. The 3 questions that we talked about to run for every single channel. Does it have a job description? Have I defined success? And what are the current results telling me? And know the difference between a channel that needs better content or more content and one that needs to be let go. Some do need a clearer job. Some need more volume. Some need to be benched this season so that you can do fewer things well. And all of that is allowed. Consistent does not have to mean constant. And you don't have to be everywhere all the time, doing all of it poorly. You can't be on channels that don't have a job. It doesn't make sense. You don't have that kind of time to waste. And you don't want to be doing a job consistently that hasn't been defined because then you're not going to get any results. So if you do nothing else this week, I want you to pick your channels and write them down and give each one a 1-sentence job description. This channel's main job is to whatever it is. And so next week, then, we're going to zoom way out and really look at a full year marketing reset. This channel check-in was the first step of that, but we're going to go deeper. So come back next week. And if you want to have more conversations about your own capacity, marketing as a mom founder, all of these questions that are probably weighing on you, make sure you save the date for our next marketing mixer. It's August 20th. The link is in the show notes so you can save your seat. And it's a networking event for mom founders where we have real honest conversations about capacity, about marketing, and you get to meet a community of people who get it and have these honest conversations together. So that's what I've got for you today. Go write those job descriptions. And as always, keep sparkling.